And so I've always admired the craft. I've always looked at it as an opportunity that had even more possibilities. So here we are.
Welcome to Celebrity Focus Insiders with your host, Rick Backrack.
My guest today is Patrick Gallagher, who spent 25 years or thereabouts leading and building businesses. Patrick is the president and CEO of Grand Craft Boats. And while we don't normally talk about the boat business here on Celebrity Focus Insiders, we are today, and I promise a special celebrity connection to this wonderful business that we'll come back to later on. So Patrick, Grand Craft is one of just a handful of wood boat manufacturers left in the world, premium wood boat manufacturers left in the world, and just a few here in the United States. And your company has a great history. Can you share a little bit about that history, where this brand came from, and up to the point where you bought it?
Yeah. So Grand Craft was started in 1979 in Holland, Michigan, and it was founded by a gentleman who has become a good friend by the name of Steve Nordheis. And so Steve always had an interest in restoring and refurbishing boats, and after a couple of years of doing it in the late 70s, his dad and his dad's co-workers who used to work at Chris Craft there building wooden boats said, "Why do you spend all this time restoring these old boats? Why don't you just start making new wooden boats like we used to do about 10 years ago at Chris Craft?" And so after a while, he started thinking about that and realizing, maybe that is the way to proceed. So he recruited a Chris Craft legend who is the grandson of the founder of Chris Craft. And he asked him if he would help him kind of get this business started and maybe help lend a little bit of cachet with his name in the industry to help get it off the ground. So they actually both went to their grandfathers and asked if they would be willing to kick in some initial seed capital to get Steve's company started. And so both grandfathers did. And as the two guys were thinking about what to name Steve's company, Steve came up with the idea of, well, we both got money from our grandfathers. Let's call it Grand Craft. And so that's how the name was born back in 1979. Years later, Steve sold the business to a gentleman who then owned it for 25 years. And that's really, really where it continued to go to the next level in terms of brand awareness, getting the product to those who could afford an expensive, beautiful handmade wooden boat. So the mid 80s through the late 90s was a really, really prosperous time for Grand Crafts. And it included a lot of high celebrities and titans of the industry from coast to coast. So a very neat story about a company that's been around now for 43 years. I was interested in finding a company that would excite me and would need my skill sets. And that's where one thing led to another. And I thought about the wooden boats. I grew up with a wooden boat in our family here in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And so I've always admired the craft. I've always looked at it as an opportunity that had even more possibilities. So here we are at the end of 2020. I identified Grandcraft and started speaking with the owner at the time, and told him I was very interested in exploring opportunities to potentially buy the business. And several months later, my wife and I, Rose, bought the company in 2021, and we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary. So, man, time has flown. I cannot believe it's been 2 years already, but we are absolutely making much forward progress with the brand and building the business.
So this really is a great American story. And I know that Grandcraft in its heyday, you guys were making a dozen boats a year or a little more than that, or right around there. And, to a viewer that thinks about boats, like, oh, a dozen boats a year, it's not a big deal. But, this, and we'll come more into the craft in a couple of minutes, but this process is a meticulous process. And, I know that the business had dwindled when you bought the business in Holland, Michigan. It really dwindled down to about a boat or two a year.
Right.
And you made some very strategic decisions to relocate that company and to ramp things up to get back to where it was. And those, I know there were quality driven decisions, but you made a huge decision to move this great company from Holland, Michigan to Lake Geneva. And it was a big deal at the time. I know it was a big enough deal for the governor to pay attention to. I know Governor Evers was there when you christened the move. How are you building a workforce here or not here, but there in southern Wisconsin? Why did that move make sense? And how are you impacting that local area?
Yeah. The decision to move from Holland, Michigan to outside of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin was really based on a couple of things. Number one is, as you had mentioned, the company had atrophied. There were only 2 full-time craftsmen on board, and that was essentially it. So we knew that if we were going to relocate the business, the sooner we did it out of the gate, the better. And so we appealed to those 2 craftsmen and asked if they would stay on for the ride and move over to Wisconsin. They both agreed because they wanted to be a part of this. Number 2, the reason to establish the business here in Wisconsin was really based simply on, this is where we have our summer home. This is a convenient place for us to be able to grow the business without adding a third location in our lives. We didn't want to have Chicago, Lake Geneva, and then Holland, Michigan to contend with. We really wanted to try to consolidate our personal and professional needs in something that was logistically more feasible. So moving it to Wisconsin was a no-brainer from the lifestyle standpoint, but also just as important is, I've known that Lake Geneva has the potential to be perhaps our biggest market in the long run. There is a long heritage for the love of wooden boats here. There is the consumer, the target audience are plentiful here. There's a lot of ultra high net worth individuals that are right here on Lake Geneva. The issue of the workforce, we really believed that the trim carpenter and the marine technicians were here. And the way we attracted them was by design, is to be very competitively situated in terms of what we're offering them in terms of pay and benefits, and most importantly, culture. We wanted, and we have created a culture where they want to be a part of this. They have the skill set. We want to make sure that they have the mindset as well, that attention to detail, and that they all subscribe to the company's core values. That was pivotal to be able to create this team we did, is making sure that they really bought into the vision of what we were trying to establish here.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a minute or so. Lots more to ask you about. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
I want to personally thank all the teachers out there, especially at the Goddard School.
A special message of love and appreciation.
It's all about giving kids the best chance to succeed, not just in the classroom, but in life. We are Goddard because we believe that education has the power to make the world a better place. The Goddard school system helps families develop happy, healthy, and successful kids.
Patrick, you know, we've talked a bit about your history and you've got a stellar past. I mentioned earlier that you've built a number of boats for very high profile people throughout the years. Share a few of those stories with our viewers.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when I got the phone call shortly after acquiring Grandcraft from Steve Nordheis, the founder of Grandcraft. I said, well, let's have lunch. And so we began what turned out to be a really solid friendship. And he's been a great mentor and a wealth of knowledge. And every time I talk to him, I swear he brings up another anecdote of a customer that bought a Grandcraft back in the day. A couple of those are truly notable. Robert Redford bought one. And then about a year or two later, he wanted the new model. So he traded in the first one for the second. So he's been a Grandcraft customer for many years. Jennifer Lopez bought a boat for Ben Affleck back in the day, in the early 90s. And it's interesting to look through the files and see those celebrity headshots with their letters to the owner of Grandcraft at the time, thanking them for the beautiful boat. And really pretty amazing to think about. Folks like Kid Rock put it in one of his music videos and still loves that boat. And Tim Allen's got a Grandcraft. You know, the list goes on and on. I believe there's many, many titans of the industry, major players, CEOs, politicians. Ross Perot had one. So it's a neat list, and you know, want to keep adding to it with new folks.
And I'm always amazed, and I know Peter Max had a Grandcraft as well, and there were several others. Billie Jean King had a Grandcraft. You know, you think of the parallel. These are not. This isn't just a production, roll it off the production line thing. These are all pretty well custom built, board by board, piece by piece. I've been at your factory. I see what those are like. Mm-hmm. And I think the name itself implies this is craft. It truly is art, as well as utility. A boat's a boat, of course.
Sure.
These mahogany boats are artwork. And when you look at the celebrity owners and you look at the titans of industry owners, the Ross Perots of the world, and I know there have been several others, I got to believe they're attracted by that issue of quality. You know, they're at the top of their craft and they want their toys to be at the top of their craft. I know you're considering working with new brand ambassadors now, and I would love to sell a few more boats to celebrities. But as you think about the next group that comes on board to buy and own Grand Craft boats and who may be an ambassador for you? What are the attributes you're looking for in perhaps that next personality to join forces with?
I think what we're seeing is, certainly someone who our customer base is going to very much identify with themselves. So I think it's the type of celebrity who just really exemplifies wholesomeness, integrity, somebody who's been respected for how they've carried themselves throughout their career. I think that's really important for our brand, is to make sure that this clean-cut, classic piece of America that's been maintained through Grand Craft is also demonstrated by the types of customers and celebrity customers that we would align ourselves with.
I know you have a great passion, you and Rose do, for charities and for the work you do to support your communities, both local and national. You and I have talked about the fact that there's some great opportunity for celebrities and business leaders to work with Grand Craft to connect their charities with Grand Craft together. You want to share some of those ideas before we wrap up our segment today?
Yeah, absolutely. We believe in our heart that being able to play a role in the community, whether that's locally, regionally, nationally, or even internationally, is important, and that we really all can, in our own little way, make a difference. But celebrities kind of have the power and ability to do that on a whole different level than most of us. And so what we've said is that we're ready, willing, and able to make a donation to any celebrity's charity of their choice or special cause. And the way we've kind of set it up is very simply is 5% of the retail price is what we would write a check for and donate to that charity of their choice. So I think that's a great way for us to be able to engage them and kind of put our money where our mouth is as well, and write a check to a charity.
And 5% is that's not inconsequential. These boats are not little things. They're a substantial investment, we'll say. Patrick, thank you so much for joining me today on Celebrity Focus Insiders. This has been great. I try to bring folks in from all sides of the industry, and oftentimes that means brand leadership, and in some cases, company owners like yourself. So I really appreciate you sharing the Grand Craft story and talking about your connections to the celebrity world. For our viewers, so thank you. For our viewers, I'm going to tell you, if you enjoyed this episode of Celebrity Focus Insiders, look somewhere around your screen. You're going to see a little button that says subscribe here. This podcast is available on all major podcast and podcast platforms. So sign up. We've got new episodes coming out every week, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Celebrity Focus Insiders, connecting famous people with famous brands. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date and check out our past episodes at celebrityfocus.com.